right into the gaps, particularly in the application of technologies and innovation in the health system. One key observation that was made during the outbreak of this COVID-19 pandemic is that the attendance to health facilities, to hospitals, suddenly went down. Now, was this due to fear of the COVID-19? That could be one reason. But another most likely reason was the widespread use of simple technologies of hand washing that became widespread in the country. Ordinarily, we already know the importance of hand washing, but we often do not practice it as much as we have seen during this pandemic. Now we know very well among the major killers, particularly among children, are diarrheal diseases and respiratory infections, which can be controlled by basic hygiene measures as the hand washing that is now widely applied. And this most likely contributed to the reduction of the visits to health facilities. But ordinarily we do not apply these technologies of prevention, of disease prevention, as much as we should be doing. But we can now see the effects of what transformation those simple technologies can do. We should not wait for the shocks of pandemics to start applying these simple technologies which can be widely made available through our own efforts and entrepreneurs. The other key problem that we need perhaps to address in the health system is the application of ICT, information and communication. We seem to have, again, a big gap. For instance, a key intervention in this pandemic is vaccination. But we seem to have all the wrong information, most widely spread through the social media. It's about 2 centuries ago now when Edward Jenner and Louis Pasteur laid down the basis of application of vaccines in preventing infections. And yet now, in the 21st century, we are able to spread a lot of wrong information that vaccinations don't work or they will cause all types of harm. And that interferes with the management of diseases such as the pandemic that we have. It also affects even the prevention of childhood diseases. We've seen women running away from their home states when health workers go to vaccinate children because they believe or they have the long beliefs about that those vaccines. So we really do need to enhance the application of ICT in the delivery of health services. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Makoha and Yenda Machage from NHIF for your insight regarding our panel discussion today. So finally, I think we have Dr. Jose Lono. And Dr. Lono, I want to give you just 1 minute to give your insight regarding the discussion that you're having on the overview of healthcare in this country. Please, just if you can hear us, just join the conversation so that we can be able to wrap up this discussion. We are running short of time. Kindly understand we don't have a lot of time. So, Dr. Rono, please.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. And just to build on the remarks that have been made earlier, I think to set the context correctly, Kenya is one of those countries where there's a disproportionate high burden of disease. So, for instance, you find, in Africa in general, Africa is home to only about 12% of the global population, but we bear about 26% of the global disease. So we are bearing way more than the population we have, and we only benefit from about 1 or 2% of global health expenditure. So that gives you the sense of how acutely urgent it is to invest more in healthcare. So if you look at the Kenyan health system, I think a critical gap, and to answer your question directly, is that the fiscal space for health is very limited. If you look at the general government health expenditure in health, it's at best 2.1% of GDP, which is far short of the 5% that is required to achieve universal health coverage. So we really need to invest more into healthcare. I think a lot of the other things within the health system, whether it's human resources or health products and technologies or health information system, are dependent almost entirely on how much we actually prioritize and actually invest into healthcare. So I think the gap is still significant from a health financing perspective. And coming closer to a critical theme of this conference around innovation and technology. Again, as a country, we are very ambitious plans in terms of how much we should invest. Our Health Act and our existing laws demand that we invest at least 2% of our GDP into R&D, and about 30% of that should go into health research, for instance. So that means we should be investing anywhere in excess of 5 billion shillings within the health landscape. Those are estimates from 2019. But out of that estimate, about 5 billion shillings in 2019, I think we only invested about 20% of it, meaning that we still have a gap of about 80% of investment. So I think there is a critical need to really prioritize healthcare as any other investment. And granted, the resources are not sufficient for everything we need. So we need to look at what are the most cost-effective interventions that we can invest in. So for instance, if you look at the healthcare budget, we need to ask ourselves, what are we investing the little resource we have? I have been involved in work looking at the return on investment on many healthcare interventions, and some of them that stand out include community healthcare, where we know now that if you put in 1 shilling into community health, you'll get about 10 shillings back into the economy, which is a very strong return on investment that you don't see in many other levels of the healthcare system or in many other sectors in the economy, whether it's infrastructure, mining, etc. So there is a very strong case for investing in healthcare as an investment and not just as a cost item. I don't think we get a tenfold return on investment in many other sectors. So I think, in summary, my contribution is to say, there's an acutely big gap in investment. We need to just be deliberate about investing more in healthcare, and then looking at that investment and saying, are we putting it where it counts the most? Let's put it in the most cost-effective interventions, which at this point include, community health work, immunization, and primary healthcare. And I think, we just need to look at the evidence and make the right decision based on the data that exists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rono, for being very brief in terms of your perspective. Yes, we take note of the aspects of the aspect of investments that we need to take a deep reflection on. We almost coming to the end of this session, though we wish could have actually taken a lot of time to dig deeper into the issues of health. Health is a critical sector in this country. We can't grow or we can't develop as a country if we don't invest in our health. So we need to develop a health system, And I think this is a discussion that we have had, and I think we all need to see how we can, put recommendations and march that direction. So we're not going to have a Q&A session, but what we can request those who are watching us live online is to use the chat. Please put your comment there or your question so that we can look at those comments later on and address them at the appropriate time. So I want to thank all the panelists for the time they have taken to be with us. And please join me to clap for them, the three of them. Thank you. So thank you very much. MC, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Njogu. Once again, a round of applause for the panelists and also Dr. Njogu doing an incredible job of chairing this particular panel. Wapigeni makofi tafadhali. Let us not be mean with our applause. All right, thank you very much. So it is actually almost 11 rather, 1 hour ahead. And I'd like us to go straight ahead into the official opening of the conference. I know this is the day that the Lord has made, that we should be rejoicing in it. I'm forgetting my Bible verses right there. But we are supposed, actually, for our online audience, keep your questions coming. We'll be sharing them. But to kickstart this special session 1, I'd like to welcome Ms. Catherine Mwoki, who is Economic Planning Secretary from the State Department for Planning, to chair the special session 1. Welcome. Mpigeni makofi akikuja tafadhali. Mpaka afike. Let's continue. Thank you very much.
Let me just remove this. Our chief guest, Mr. Eric Wafuko, Chief Administrative Secretary, the National Treasury and Planning, who is representing the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Planning, Dr. Sarah Ruto, Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Education, representing the CS, Ministry of Education, Dr. Oscar Magenya, representing the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives, Dr. Charles Nzioka, representing the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Health, Development partners present, KIPPRA board members, Executive Director KIPPRA and staff, representatives from both levels of government, civil society organizations, private sector, academia, researchers, youth representatives, distinguished resource persons and delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here today at this opening session of the 4th KIPPRA Annual Regional Conference 2021, and I'm chairing this session on behalf of the Principal Secretary, State Department for Planning, Mr. Saitoti Torome, who is on another official duty, so I bring you his greetings. My name is Catherine Mwoki. I'm the Economic Planning Secretary in the State Department for Planning. ST&I is close to my heart. I was director responsible for this particular area for over 10 years, and so it is a very special area that in my work generally. So this 3 days conference, whose theme is Science, Technology and Innovation in Enhancing Delivery of the Big Four Development Agenda, brings together key stakeholders to share information and knowledge, as well as lessons in best practices with resulting increased partnerships, synergies and collaboration. The conversation that we are having in the course of these 3 days on ST&I is very timely. It comes at a time when at local and global level, we are facing challenges with protracted effects of COVID-19 pandemic, which requires us to come up with solutions to help us cope with the situation and innovatively get to the recovery path. During this opening session, we will listen to a number of speakers, culminating into the keynote address and official opening of the conference by our chief guest. And to start us off, I would like to invite the Executive Director of the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research Analysis, KIPPRA, Dr. Rose Ngugi, to give her welcoming remarks. Karibu Daktari. Maybe we can also clap for her as she comes along to encourage her.
Good morning, our chief guest, Honorable Eric Wafuko, Chief Administrative Secretary, the National Treasury and Planning, representing Honorable Yatani, Cabinet Secretary, the National Treasury and Planning, Dr. Sarah Ruto, Chief Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Education, representing Professor George Magoha, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Education, Dr. Oscar Magea, Ministry of Agriculture, representing Honorable CS Peter Muya. I also want to recognize Dr. Charles Nzioka, Ministry of Health, representing Cabinet Secretary Honorable Mutahi Kagwe. I also want to recognize Madam Catherine Mwoki, who is representing our Principal Secretary, Mr. Saitoti Torome, State Department of Planning. I also want to recognize Dr. Linda Musumba, KIPPRA Board Chair, KIPPRA board members who are present here and also listening to us virtually, development partners present, representatives from ministries, departments, agencies, and also from the county government level, KIPPRA staff, members of press, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to welcome you all to this conference. We are grateful that you found time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. The conference is organized as a platform for stakeholders to exchange views, share experience, and learn from each other as we build the knowledge-based economy. We have publicized the conference through various media platforms, and our hope is that all stakeholders will actually participate in the conference. So, ladies and gentlemen, as per our KIPPRA Act 15 of 2006, KIPPRA is mandated to organize symposia, conferences, workshops, and other meetings to promote exchange of views on issues related to public policy research and analysis. It is for that reason that today we are gathering here in this conference. For every conference, we choose a theme that focuses on public policy, and this year, as discussed, as also indicated by our chair for this session, we are focusing on science, technology, innovation, and its role in improving quality of life by enhancing the implementation of the Big Four agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, science, technology, and innovation is a complex sector, and in 3 days we cannot actually cover everything. So in this period, we have chosen 8 themes. We are trying to explore where we are, the status. We are also looking at the milestones that we have come through in policy, institution, and legislative framework. We are also looking at development of human capital, which is necessary to drive a knowledge-based economy. How far we are also with building a strong innovation system, including adequately funding R&D, and also putting in place appropriate infrastructure. We are also not forgetting to look at cross-cutting issues, including data, gender, and persons with disability, and all this in a quest for building resilience in various sectors, including manufacturing, micro and small enterprises, agriculture, among other sectors. We are also showcasing various innovations, cutting across various sectors, including transport. We have motorized mkokoteni, advanced technology with assistive devices, supporting farmers with access to information, and also in health sector, the innovation on ventilators, among other innovations that you can see displayed in the virtual system that we are using today. Ladies and gentlemen, as an institution, we are also in the space of STNI. We undertake research in generating evidence for policy advice. We have capacity building programs that are geared towards equipping youth with skills for policy analysis and research. And we also bring together stakeholders like today to exchange views which build knowledge. I also want to say that as an institution, we've been recognized as the second best think tank in sub-Saharan Africa. And recently also the Directorate of National Cohesion and Values has awarded KIPPRA a certificate of compliance with matters national values and principles. I wish all of us fruitful deliberations, stay safe and keep safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ngugi. Can we give another round of applause? Yeah, and congratulations to KIPPRA for doing us proud in the awards that they have received. It's now my pleasure to invite the chair of KIPPRA board, Dr. Linda Musumba, to come and give her opening remarks. Karibu, Dr. Musumba. Let's clap for her as she comes up, please. Thank you.
Good morning to all who are gathered here and those who are also following us online. I'd like to recognize Honorable Eric Wafuko, who's the Chief Administrative Secretary in the National Treasury, representing our Cabinet Secretary here today, the Honorable Ambassador Ukur Yatani. I'd like to recognize Dr. Sarah Ruto, who is the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Education, representing the CS, Professor George Magoha. I'd also like to recognize Dr. Oscar Magenya, who's representing the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives. I'd like to recognize Dr. Nzioka, who's here, the Director for Health, Policy and Research at the Ministry of Health, who's here representing the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Health, the Honorable Mutahi Kagwe. I'd like to recognize Madam Catherine Mwoki, who's the Economic Planning Secretary at the National Treasury, representing the Principal Secretary, State Department for Planning, Mr. Saitoti Torome. All heads of divisions within government, the two levels of government who are present here, representatives from development partners who are present here, the KIPPRA board members, some who are here present with us on the front row here, and others who are following online, the Executive Director, KIPPRA staff, members of the press, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and especially also our youth who are gathered here with us in the conference room, which is adjacent to this one, and are going through their youth conference this morning. Good morning. It gives me a lot of pleasure to welcome you all to our fourth KIPPRA Annual Regional Conference, Karibuni Sana. Our aim is to hold the conference in a different county each year. However, unfortunately, due to various constraints posed by COVID-19, this year we were not able to go to a county outside Nairobi, and thus we are holding it in Nairobi. Although Nairobi is a county no less. To ensure we abide by the COVID-19 protocols at all times, we have given opportunity to stakeholders to participate with us, physically ensuring the COVID-19 protocols are observed, as well as virtually. For those who are physically present, let us abide. It is for our own good and the good of those who are around us. And for those who are watching, who are with us virtually, we hope that you do enjoy the conference as much as we're enjoying it here on the ground. Our KIPPRA Act, number 15 of 2006, mandates that we organize a conference annually to provide a platform to stakeholders to have a conversation with each other, learn from one another, and share experiences on prioritized policy issues. The conference this year, which focuses on science, technology, and innovation in enhancing delivery of the Big Four development agenda, which you're all aware of, is one of the long-term development, is captured in one of the long-term development blueprints in Kenya, that is the Vision 2030, which is a key foundation to achieving socio-economic transformation through a knowledge-based economy. The Big Four agenda, which is part of the third medium-term plan, is targeted at ensuring that there is adequate provision of basic needs to improve the quality of life for all Kenyans. During this conference, participants are therefore expected or urged to explore where more effort is required to ensure that ST&I play its role effectively as an enabler in supporting delivery of this agenda. Sometimes ST&I looks far off from our daily lives, but science really does help us by accumulating knowledge necessary to make personal decisions or choices in our daily lives. This includes in our kitchen, agriculture, health, and recreation. We apply science in practical purposes to improve the quality of life. When African leaders met for the first Africa Forum for ST&I, held in Nairobi in 2012, they agreed to ensure that ST&I is used to solve societal problems such as health, water, ICT, energy, and agriculture to improve the well-being of people in harnessing ST&I for sustainable development. Science also helps us in generating evidence that informs policy direction in achieving sustainable development. When KIPPRA undertakes objective research, it generates evidence to inform policy advice shared with the policymakers. In the COVID-19 period, policymakers are guided by science in coming up with measures to mitigate the spread of the virus and support those who fall ill. Since yesterday, there were very interesting sessions yesterday. Honorable Wafuko and all dignitaries who are gathered here and members who are everywhere. There are very interesting presentations made yesterday as well as this morning, and I believe going on. Some of the things, of course, that came to my mind include the fact that for those of us who read Things Fall Apart, of course you're aware and you're familiar with Okonkwo, who was a principal character in that novel by Chinua Achebe. And one of the most interesting things about Okonkwo was that we were told that his barns were ever full. His barns were ever full, and that's why he got an elevated status at a very young age. And I asked myself, what exactly did Okonkwo do to ensure such a robust yield? Could he have been using science, to make this happen? Then we have, of course, Israel, which is a trailblazer in the use of science, technology, and innovation to be able to convert what is, at best, an arid area to make it an area that is bountiful with food, something, of course, which we have also tried in our Galana Kulalu, and some of the reports that we get from there in the recent past are quite encouraging. Today, I have read the newspaper this morning that says the BJ50 from Laikipia County, which we talked about yesterday, has now been approved to receive number plates. So if you're seated there thinking that the BJ50 doesn't look like your Toyota, doesn't look like your Nissan, and you're wondering why are they producing something that doesn't look familiar in this day and age, keep wondering, because tomorrow, when they improve on the design and in years to come, it's something that we shall be very, very proud of, that we have a vehicle that has been made in this country. People have argued that the technology that has gone into making these motor vehicles is not new. People have said there's nothing new. Why reinvent the wheel? But the thing is this, up to and until the time we're able to get parts like other vehicles we may be familiar with, this is what we have, we're going to start with. It's going to solve problems in our country. And I can assure you that, I visualize it as a vehicle that can be used by parents who are collecting their children from school. If you have a church, you can buy your pastor if they don't have a vehicle so that they can serve you better. There are so many uses to which we can put this. Something else that has come to mind, during the COVID pandemic, in terms of the universal health coverage, some of the positive things that have happened with the era of frequently washing our hands, sanitizing, etc., we have read in the press very, very encouraging reports that we have had a concomitant drop in communicable diseases. We have read that people who suffer from asthma, there are those who've reported that because of wearing the mask, they have not had an attack in a year or more. We have seen that our children who now frequently wash their hands have now improved health because they don't frequently fall ill as a result of diseases that they had before. My final point has to do with something that I saw the elders do at home when we intended to make a borehole. And they came with their wires. Some of you may be familiar with this. And they were, panning them. And this is to locate exactly where the water is. So I know that that's a technology that many may not be familiar with. However, as a result of the elders pointing to exactly where on the ground the water is, the water was exactly there. We have also heard of people trying to locate where water is in other areas severally, but then not able to find. What technology is that? What's our attitude also towards traditional technologies? So in this conference, as we progress, it will be interesting to know whether sometimes our attitudes also have an impact on encouraging the growth of ST&I in our country. As I conclude, I wish to thank the KIPPRA staff and management, KIPPRA board members, our esteemed stakeholders and partners, and more specifically our parent ministry for the continued support and for participating in our conference. With those few remarks, I do wish all of us a fruitful engagement and karibuni sana. Thank you.
Let's give Dr. Musumba another round of applause for a very insightful and encouraging remarks in the context of science, technology, and innovation. Our next speaker will be Dr. Sarah Ruto, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Minister of Education, and the topic of her talk will be the importance of education systems in development of human capital, science, technology, and innovation. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ruto to the stage. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Good morning. Good morning. I come from education, so interaction is very important. Good morning. Yes, it is a pleasure to be here this morning and to represent Professor George Magoha, who had been invited to present this speech. So, all protocols observed. I realize there are very many cabinet chief administrative secretaries, the leadership of KIPPRA, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Professor Magoha, he says that he's very happy to be invited to speak during the 4th KIPPRA Regional Conference, whose theme is Science, Technology, and Innovation in Enhancing the Delivery of the Big Four Agenda. I am informed that the aim of the conference is to share experiences on how science, technology, and innovation can be utilized to propel the country to a knowledge-based economy. Ladies and gentlemen, the conference is timely since it is in sync both with the vision and the mission of the Ministry of Education, where science, technology, and innovation given a lot of emphasis. You might all be aware and know that we are now doing reforms that have ushered in the competency-based education. And in the competency-based education, there are 7 key competencies. And these are very aligned with what we are talking about, because one of the competencies, for example, is problem solving, which does not need to start now. It starts very early on in PP1, PP2, when children are entering school, even before then. And so this is what the Ministry of Education is doing its role in ensuring that the attitude is inculcated throughout education and not waiting for the end product. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to announce that the Ministry of Education has developed a policy and legislative framework for education and training to align the human capital development needs of the country to the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and the Kenya Vision 2030. Some of these laws include the University Act of 2012, the Basic Education Act number 14 of 2013, that guides basic education institutions, colleges, Technical and Vocational Training Act of number 29 of 2013, that guides technical institutions and national polytechnics, the Science, Technology and Innovation Act 2013 to guide issues of science, and the Early Education Act 2021, this is the new baby in the house, that guides the operations of early childhood stages of education. These acts, policies show that the conceptualization is very clear. It is really about implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, during the formative years of independent Africa, leaders such as Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, amongst others, valued education and placed it amongst their priority areas of development. The leaders recognized education since it is considered to be the engine of academic, cultural, economic, socio-political, and technological development. Therefore, with this scenario, and following the same spirit, our country has witnessed unprecedented growth in education at all levels. Ladies and gentlemen, the current state of poverty of many countries in Africa has been a subject of debate among scholars and policymakers, not only due to lack of capital, but more importantly, because they lack adequate knowledge and skills to enhance productivity and increase national output. In fact, many African countries are blessed with different kinds of natural resources which could be exploited to realize positive levels of development. Unfortunately, transformation continues to elude the continent, mainly due to human capital constraints in the form of knowledge, skills, and technical expertise to exploit the natural resources so as to promote growth and economic transformation. Human capital has been recognized as a critical resource to the development of any nation, as it is at the center of growth in education, health, labor, and employment. In today's world, human capital development is crucial for attaining a sustainable economic growth and development. Higher education is a prerequisite for the production of highly competent experts, which in turn contributes to the development of organizations and the economy at large. And at this point, it is good to remind ourselves that higher education, we must always remember its tripartite functions, that a university lecturer is called to teach, to do research, to do community service. And when one of those fails, then higher education fails to do what it needs to do and to contribute to the development we are talking about. There are various studies that stress the essential role of education as the most important production factor in increasing human capital as a determinant of economic growth. Indeed, education helps individuals to acquire knowledge which encourages participation in groups, opens doors to job opportunities, develops social interactions, makes individuals aware of their rights, improves health, and reduces poverty. The human capital base of a country is measured both by the education system and the level of its citizens, which is further an indicator of the stage of technological and economic development of the country. The availability of highly skilled workforce has been known to promote research and innovation in a country. Moreover, high quality of labor raises efficiency and effectiveness of a country. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to improve on human capital in a country like ours, we have kept emphasizing on training and retooling of teachers, proper motivation of personnel, and allocation of more funds to the Ministry of Education for intensification of research, amongst others. There is also need to align education to the regional labor markets for employability and for relevance. We have also given priority to education reforms as a prerequisite for acquiring new skills and making education to be relevant. Indeed, this is evident with the introduction of the competency-based curriculum, and as you may all be aware, that we are going to have the grade 5 students joining, students who are in grade 4 moving on to grade 5 in the phase-in, phase-out of the competency-based curriculum. Moreover, the gap between the genders should be bridged to ensure all Kenyans participate in education equally. Higher education institutions and regional governments should take steps to significantly expand higher education opportunities for all, and especially for the working-age adults. We should increase enrollment and expand retention and success rates at all levels of education. In conclusion, Professor Magoha wishes to sincerely thank the organizers of the events and, of course, to the participants who are here and online for listening to his speech. Thank you very much.
Let us give another hand of applause. Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah Ruto, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Education, representing the CS Education, and articulating very clearly the importance of the education systems in development of human capital, science, technology, and innovation. Kindly give our regards to the CS. We appreciate that he honored our invitation. It's now my pleasure to invite the next speaker, representing the CS Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperatives. The speaker will be Dr. Oscar Magenya, and he'll be speaking on the role of science, technology, and innovation in enhancing food security and nutrition in Kenya. Please let us welcome him with a hand of applause. Karibu sana, Dr. Magenya.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Madam MC. I'm Dr. Oscar Magenya. I work as the Director of Research and Innovation in the Ministry of Agriculture. I'm here to represent my CS, and maybe just to start I would like to acknowledge the Honorable Wafuko, who is the Chief Administrative Secretary, the National Treasury Planning, representing the CS Treasury, Dr. Sarah Ruto, CS Education, Dr. Linda Musumba, Board Chair KIPPRA, Ms. Catherine Mwoki, State Department for Planning, representing the PS Planning, the KIPPRA board, Dr. Ross Ngugi, Executive Director of KIPPRA, and all distinguished guests, all protocols observed. Our CS Cabinet Secretary, Peter Munya, Honorable Peter Munya, would have loved to be here today, but because of some urgent matters, he was not able to come, and so asked me to represent him. And so I'll read his remarks that he was to present during this conference. And the CS says this: I'm delighted to be here today to talk on the role of STI in enhancing food security and nutrition in Kenya during this 4th annual KIPPRA regional conference. And he starts by saying that Kenya's agriculture is central to meeting the challenges of feeding a growing population. We project that in the next, before we reach our Vision 2030, the 9 years that are remaining, we will be expected to generate food that is of quality and sufficient to be able to feed the growing population on very limited resources like arable land and water and other resources. So the agriculture is central to meeting the challenges of feeding a growing population, creating wealth, reducing poverty, and managing the degradation of natural resources. My ministry contributes to food and nutrition security, raw materials for agro-industry, employment creation, and foreign exchange earnings. It therefore remains a major economic pillar that addresses the Vision 2030 agenda. Agriculture will contribute effectively to these national goals if continued emphasis is put on the positive factors that underpinned the remarkable agricultural growth realized since 2003. Further, concerted efforts must be made to address the country's vulnerability to climate change and other external shocks, as well as a need to initiate policy and institutional reforms to address globalization, constitutional, and other changes in the sector. It is worth noting that these are achievable through effective agricultural research system. The government recognizes the important role agricultural technology development and application can play in transforming and modernizing agriculture and specifically food production. Currently, we are implementing the agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy, which is a 10-year strategy that is supposed to modernize the agricultural sector in the country, and all players and actors in the agricultural space or food security space have to conform to how we focus this country for agricultural production and have to align themselves with this strategy of 2019 and up to 2029. This strategy addresses the challenges in the agricultural sector to deliver the 10% annual economic growth that is envisaged under the economic pillar of Vision 2030. More so, the Constitution of Kenya also acknowledges the importance of proper coordination and synergies in agricultural research, and therefore placed it under responsibility of the national government, while it placed services to farmers through agricultural extension services under the county governments. Presently, agricultural production is negatively affected by constraints and changing factors that include increasing population pressure, unsustainable land and environment management practices, dependency on an unreliable rain-fed agriculture, inaccessible and high input costs, climate change resulting in severe erratic weather patterns, and emerging pests and diseases. The last one is on the decreasing access to production resources such as credit and technology amidst the ever-increasing poverty levels. The adoption of agricultural technologies, ladies and gentlemen, and innovations can lead to increased productivity and quality along the agricultural value chains. We also appreciate that for an organization like KIPPRA, that will depend on the quality of the data that is generated for agriculture from sectors like agriculture research. It will be very critical to the analysis that happens in KIPPRA. However, agriculture research is constrained by weak research extension farmer linkages, weak interdisciplinary collaborations and partnerships in agriculture research, inadequate capacity for research, slow adoption of new and emerging technologies, and gender and socioeconomic aspects of agriculture. A logical and well-founded, solution-oriented and impactful agricultural research system is therefore pivotal to addressing these challenges. And in order to address the above constantly changing factors, ladies and gentlemen, it is important that effective and efficient agricultural research has to be developed that is more dynamic too and well coordinated in a continuous process. The implementation of the National Agricultural Research System policy that was enacted in 2012, that is currently being used, did not succeed as intended by the policy due to the fact that it became impossible along the way to bring together all institutions and stakeholders in the agricultural research system. The NAS policy that my ministry is therefore reviewing currently is to streamline, rationalize, and put in a system that is consultative, efficient, and effective, and that takes into account economies of scale to not only use the current scientific, human, and physical capacities, but also position Kenya as a hub for agricultural research and development in the region. We are currently reviewing the NAS policy, which looks at the whole agricultural research ecosystem. In this ecosystem, we have the public research organizations, which include CALRO. We have the universities, particularly universities that have faculties of agriculture, more than 28 universities in the country, both public and private. We have industry and international research centers that all do portions of research. And we think it is important that we bring all these actors together to be able to harmonize and coordinate all of us to be able to focus more critically on the national goals of attaining food and nutrition security. And therefore, to create an enabling environment for a vibrant agricultural research industry that contributes to the overarching national policies of economic growth and wealth creation, poverty reduction, gender equity, increased productivity, improved livelihoods, environmental sustainability, and eventually sustainable development. In addition, the NAS policy that I've just talked about is to promote an innovative, commercially oriented, and modern agricultural sector, and to facilitate the development of hybrid crops, livestock, and fish in line with the aspirations of the Big Four agenda, Vision 2030, the SDGs, the KIPPRA and Malabo Declaration, and the Agenda 2063 of AU, and the SDGs that we are focusing on to attain by 2030. Over the past decade, technological, political, and socioeconomic factors affecting agricultural research institutions have changed, and they have changed significantly. While the information and communication technology revolution has broadened access to knowledge and information, the private sector has become an essential player. At the same time, agricultural development is increasingly concerned with diversifying, adding value, improving product quality, emphasis on food safety, equity in economic growth, and capturing and creating markets and addressing gender parity. So if you look through, right now we are focused mainly on having dialogues on food systems that are meant to help in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals that is a conference coming in September. And so we are looking at how we can integrate all the actors to be able to feed into the processes that we are doing for agricultural research in the ministry. And one of the areas that we would like to focus on is how do we include all segments of society, the women and the youth, in how to focus on particular interventions that address the women and the youth. And the other one is how to look at the intersection of agriculture and energy and how to improve our energy supply, because it's not just enough to how to produce food, but we have to have food that can be cooked and cooked with clean energy. And so that is how we are bringing in the area of energy to provide energy for our rural women folk, and that has very clear outcomes on health and how the rural societies catch up with outcomes on health. Further, the current shift in global agricultural research towards integrated agricultural research for development and emphasis on demand-driven research calls for a major adjustment in the way research is organized and managed. At the Ministry of Agriculture, we are changing the processes to adapt the Kenyan agricultural research system into a more dynamic, innovative, responsive, and well-coordinated system that is guided by a common vision, mission, and goal, and that's to have a greater, clear, programmatic framework. Before I finalize on these remarks, I would like to say that we are lagging behind a little bit in agriculture research and in research as a